Hey guys, what's up? It is week 382. I have a bunch of reviews for you, a decent size update. Some Vinegar Syndrome stuff came in, so let's hop into the first review. And this is from Radiance Films, and this is A Man on His Knees, and this is by what I always say his first name, Damiani. He directed a slew of movies. Radiance Films put out a lot of them. Confessions of a Police Captain is one of them. Day of the Owl. And that whole Franco Nero box set that they put out recently was all directed by him. He also directed Amityville 2: The Possession, which is kind of his outliner of his filmography. Now, I talked about a few of his films before, and he's not your typical Euro kind of crime director. You wouldn't call it like Eurocrime or Poliziotteschi films. They're more so, social political. Or, they do have crime elements, but there's a lot of kind of thriller, political, social commentary elements going on here. So what we have here is Giuliano Gemma, who's in stuff like Tenebrae and A Million Westerns. He's a great actor, great Italian actor. Now, basically, he has just gotten released out of prison. He used to steal hot cars, all this kind of stuff like that. He does have ties to the criminal element, but he's opened this kind of kiosk, and he sells coffee and drinks around here, runs it. Basically, all the money that he stole, he hid, and he's basically, everything. He did 2 years for this. He wants to take care of his family, his wife, his son, and be away from the crime element. Of course, he can't be 100% away from it. He's surrounded by it. The police officers kind of frequent him a little bit. The arresting officers in a million movies, in The Folds of the Flesh, and a lot of crime films, some Umberto Lenzi movies. He's a bald actor. You'd recognize him right away. I'm still getting used to a couple of the character actors from Italy that I can never remember their names. But this guy's in a million movies. He's really good, solid character actor role in this one. And the mafia and kind of criminal element also frequent this kiosk. So what happens is there's been a kidnapping. A pretty prevalent lawyer that deals with a lot of criminal cases. His wife has been kidnapped. So again, it gets crazy, and eventually what happens is there's this kind of area that's really close to his kiosk that's behind here, and it turns out that they were kind of holding this lawyer's wife here. This is where she was kind of held and kidnapped, and she's been released, is what he thinks. But his friend who works for him, who's kind of this lowly criminal, kind of almost vagabond kind of character, also another character actors in a million of these things, kind of small guy that's been in and out of jail and prison. He notices this kind of shady kind of fellow walking around, and he follows him, and he learns that he's been asking about the guy who runs the coffee shop, the kiosk guy. So they kind of figure out that this guy's got to be some sort of criminal because the vagabond knew him in jail. So he starts to get really paranoid and think that it's tied to the kidnapping, and once he starts to dig deeper, there's been a hit ordered on 8 people. We know a few of them, they've already been killed. But now, is he one of them? He's starting to worry about it, and we don't really know how he's involved with the case, how his friend is involved with the case, and really exactly what happened in the pieces of the puzzle. But it kind of gets to paranoia, also just the idea of Gemma kind of losing his mind and trying to figure this out and burying himself deeper into it as well. But there's points when he's right, and the idea of him just kind of being this lowly person who can never get out of his life of crime is kind of depressing. It is pretty exhilarating at times. There's a car theft, all this kind of stuff like this. Gemma's fantastic in it. I think this is probably the best performance I've seen him in. I believe he's in Day of Anger. Is that the one with Lee Van Cleef, where he's the young guy that learns how to shoot? Is that the one he's in? It's been so long since I've watched that movie, but I love him in Tenebrae, playing the dumb cop. But he's excellent in this film. Just this kind of guy, and the title "Man on His Knees" comes into play very well. It's beautiful, and it's just kind of about somebody who can only be pushed around so much and everything like that, and the hierarchy and how lowly people are and how they're just written off. But excellent film. Excellently well acted. The music is great. The locations are great. You really get a sense of Italy. A lot of his films, I believe, are almost too Italian for American audience back in the day, because it doesn't. It's a great film, and it translates to people that are interested in world cinema. But I can't see your average American sitting down and watching this unless The Godfather was a very popular film, right? This is 79 years later, but this feels very Italian village, very Italian characters, interactions, the countryside, and all these things like that. The assassin, the would-be assassin, is also an excellent actor. Just a great look about him and great performance. Him and Gemma are great together. And this movie is tragic and just it ends on that kind of note where like kind of an art film should end in a way. Man on His Knees, excellent movie. Really like this one. So the special features included our new 4K restoration, of course, archival interviews with stars Gemma, Tenno Cinema Rosa, and assistant director Mina Gardena, new interview with Alberto Pezziati, author of Regia Damiani, trailer, reversible sleeve. And then we also have a booklet in here, writings by author and Italian crime expert Roberto Curti. Excellent movie, looks fantastic. If you like Gemma, if you like crime films, this is an excellent movie. Man on His Knees, great title too. The next film we have up here is Goodbye and Amen from Radiance Films, also directed by Damiani, who directed the previous film. This is 77. Now this one I really enjoyed as well. This stars Tony Mustante, who people would know from Dario Argento's Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and of course he's Nino Schibetta in the television show from HBO Oz. Great character actor. He's more of a leading guy in a lot of films as well. This also stars John Steiner, one of the great actors who appears in Italian cinema. He's not an Italian actor. I believe he's an American actor that appeared in a million Italian movies, including The Last Hunter, Tenebrae, and we just talked about Gemma, who's in Tenebrae. He's also in stuff like Caligula and Shock with Mario Bava. John Steiner is one of the most recognizable faces in Italian cinema, to me at least. I also mentioned Tony Mustante, our Claudio Cardinale. So it's got a really nice cast, and besides that, there's some familiar faces. Of course, you'd recognize the bald guy in The Fool to Flesh is in here, and one of his, Tony Mustante, is a CIA agent, and one of his partners or agents is the guy in Big Racket who loses his daughter and completely goes ballistic and nuts, and he's crazy throughout the movie. He's great in this as well. So yeah, this movie is pretty wild. In the very beginning of it, you kind of learn that there's this group of CIA agents who have all these different people and operatives, and they're setting up this big kind of overthrowing of an African country. They're going to kill the dictator, all this kind of stuff like that, and kind of put their guy in place. All these kind of things and elements like that. Everything is elaborate and set up. It's Italian. There's an American version on here as well, but it's not completed, and it was never really released widely in English. So, yeah, we're watching the Italian version, and that's 7 minutes longer than the American version. So we're getting all these details and everything like that, and there's some things that are popping up, and they're smoothing them over, and then all of a sudden, a madman in John Steiner goes to this hotel and starts shooting people, kills a couple people at random, and he ends up hiding out in this hotel with Claudia, who is kind of married to this like rich kind of businessman, but she's in there with like kind of a young actor, you know, hooking up with him and all that kind of stuff. So obviously she doesn't want a scandal. John Steiner's in there holding them captive, and before long we have like a standoff with the police and everything like that. The CIA get involved because this is ruining their kind of attack, you know, their would-be assassination. So it gets really complicated. They start to look at who's possibly doing this, and all these kind of signs lead to this guy. But we start hearing all these kind of like these left turns, and all this kind of crazy shit starts happening where it's not really who everything seems to be. The ending is excellent, and I will say this has one of the best scores in any Italian movie I've heard in a long time. I caught myself humming it for days after, and it's just one of those ones that gets stuck in your head. There's beautiful, you know, shots of the skyline. There's this great establishing shots of the city from helicopters. Not a cheap film. It's got some great actors in it, some recognizable actors. Yeah, this is just an excellent film all around. Is it my favorite of his? I think Day of the Owl was such an amazing movie too. In fact, this director, everything he does is phenomenal, and he always uses top class talent, from the actors to the cinematographers to the people who score the films. But Goodbye and Amen has a great ending. It has great twisted turns, a lot of espionage. No, I wouldn't say espionage. It's not a spy movie, but it's really like a CIA movie and stuff like that, with kind of, I don't want to say conspiracies, but you really can't trust a lot of people. Nothing as it appears. It's a gorgeous looking movie. There's a lot of interesting, you know, camera work and everything like that. As far as the special features are concerned, we have new 2023 restoration of the film, and we have both cuts, of course. And then we have an audio commentary with Nathaniel Thompson and Howard S. Berger. That's really good stuff because they point out, you know, a lot of the cinematography movie and how they're framing stuff and making it interesting as well, and talk about the characters and how Tony Mustante is just acting perfectly. He doesn't overact, he doesn't underact, and I would agree with that. I thought he did a really tremendous performance. Unlike, he's good in Bird with the Crystal Plumage, but Dario doesn't give a lot of the actors stuff to do. Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's just almost like they're just like pawns for him to move around and visually direct. They're good for the most part, but this was a really nice, like, kind of rich character with a lot of complexities in him. And then we also have an interview with editor Antonio Celiniano, archival interview with Wolfgang Soledadi, new and improving with subtitles, of course. Yeah, and we have limited edition booklet featuring new writing by Italian crime expert Lucida Rinaldi. So, excellent release, excellent movie, looks gorgeous, sounds gorgeous, 1977, beautiful looking movie. Goodbye and amen. Alright, the next one here is a double features from Film Masters, and this is Door to Door Maniac and Right Hand of the Devil. We'll start with Door to Door Maniac from 1961, starring everybody's favorite, Johnny Cash. And we also have Vic Tayback, who's a character actor in a slew of things, tons of movies, very, very recognizable voice. So, Door to Door Maniac is a re-edited kind of version of a movie called 5 Minutes to Live, which is a Johnny Cash song. I don't know if this song was actually made for the movie. Great, cool song, though. But, yeah, so it was kind of like added in like a rape kind of scene, but it's not super graphic, but for the time I'm sure it was. But they added in kind of like a rape scene that has a stand-in for Johnny Cash. So Johnny Cash is basically a criminal, violent criminal. In the very beginning, he guns down some cops, and he's basically getting hired to do this kind of job by Vic Tayback. We kind of have the framing story where Vic Tayback's already caught and he's talking and like that. So essentially what happens is we have Johnny Cash go into this house to basically hold this woman hostage while her husband is at the bank, and he's supposed to sign over a bunch of money. But what she doesn't know is her husband's having an affair. So maybe he won't really care about his wife's safety as much as they think he will. Vic Tayback's in the bank. Things are going to get complicated. Johnny Cash is a bad son of a bitch. He's playing guitar. He's shooting at vases right by her face, breaking stuff like that, having his own kind of soliloquizing going on. Cash is fine in it, especially for a first role. He's not bad. Overall, I think the acting is all right. Some of it's a little stale. The husband kind of plays that kind of very typical kind of 60s, 50s, 60s kind of character who's like uptight, weird, kind of unsure, like kind of character, very nervous in a way. But I think he's definitely underacting, I would say. Vic Tayback is solid, of course. Overall, this movie is decent. It's okay. I didn't think it was amazing or anything like that. It's very cheesy. Ron Howard's in it as a young boy, tiny kid in this. It's very cheesy. Some of the acting is a little iffy. It's got weird kind of social messages in here, because we have all these characters, the wife's constantly busy, the husband's having an affair, and he's torn to save her, all this kind of stuff. Husband, not really a likable character if you look at it to today's lenses. I'm sure he wasn't at this time either. But Door to Door Maniac is all right. There is a commentary, of course, by author, podcaster Daniel Budnick and film historian Rob Kelly. They like the movie. They have some laughs about it, but they do seem to enjoy it. They do a good job. So, yeah, I don't really have too much to say about Door to Door Maniac or 5 Minutes to Live, which I don't know. I think I prefer the title. It's not a horror film. Of course, it's a crime film through and through. But, yeah, overall, Door to Door Maniac is all right. It reminded me of Desperate Hours. Kind of not as good as that. Kind of the B picture or B version of something like that. So, yeah. Alright, the next film is Right Hand of the Devil, and this is kind of a cheesier, cheaper film. Of course, it's a beat picture on the Film Masters. So what we have here is another kind of heist film, a crime film. We have this very bizarre character who, they mention in the special features that he was in Topaz by Alfred Hitchcock, but he kind of pissed Hitchcock off, so they cut his scenes and everything like that. So he's not really been in too many movies. He directed this film. This is a vanity project, and he reminds me of kind of Peter Lorre Light, kind of in that kind of style, and he's an evil criminal. So kind of like the movie, what is it, the Kubrick one, the Killers, where The Killing, where they're robbing like that, like kind of like high, like fancy place, the racetrack, the dog track race, or a horse track race, yeah, the horses and whatever. So this criminal has an idea to kind of rob this, is it like a sporting event, and he starts to date this older woman who's involved directly with the money, so he can get it in on there. He hires 4 guys, all from different walks of life. One is kind of playing as like he's like acting as a cop. He finds these other guys, which really hilarious scenes. Like it's almost like they didn't know what they were shooting from day day to day. So like some guy will be super nervous or intense, and then the next guy will be like whatever. And it's just like the characters don't ever really seem like, you know, the main guy like who's recruiting them it doesn't seem like the same guy. It's just very bizarre. The acting is really kind of all over the place, and I like the performance by the older woman, but everyone else is really fucking shaky, like shaky amateur acting for sure, 100%. The main bad guy is almost hilarious, like a Vanity Project thing where it's like, you know, to watch those like 80s and 90s action movies where the guy, you know, knew martial arts and he paid for the whole fucking movie and he's the star. It kind of reminds me of that a little bit, although this guy does have some acting training. He's very ridiculous, very over the top, you know, kind of like, you know, a black kind of a widow killer, right? Or not Black Widow, but what would you say? Where he goes in and dates and courts old ladies and steals all their shit. That's kind of his MO. But they end up pulling this heist off, and of course this guy is no good. There's almost seems to be like a weird kind of mad scientist vibe, but you really don't, you know, I don't know how to explain that, but the crime film does have this weird mad scientist vibe. And, you know, he's like burning bodies and getting rid of bodies. He's just a completely untrustworthy guy. Overall, what is Right Hand of the Devil is okay. You can get some kicks out of it. Watch it with a couple friends. I think you'll kind of enjoy it a little bit. They're both relatively short. They both look really good. They're both, you can watch it in TV versions and the theatrical versions. You know, TV's cut, you know, full frame, you know, 4:3 kind of deal. But you can watch the widescreen presentations as well. Yeah, so if this sounds like it's up your alley, they got Door to Door Maniac and the ultra rare bonus film Right Hand of the Devil, which has its charm as well. So check out these from Film Masters. Okay, next one up. I got my Vinegar Syndrome package, so I decided to watch one of these, and I decided to watch Hell's Trap from 1989. This is a bizarre kind of slasher film, directed by Pedro Galino Jr., and, you know, he also, I think, directed one of the Vacations of Horror movie, or Terror movie, which are fun. The second one's the crazy one. I think he directed that one. So what we have here is a group of friends that, you know, they're doing paintball kind of deal. Reminded me of Zero Boys or something along those lines from Nico Makarakis, 1986. And one of the guys gets the best of them, and this guy's completely irate. They get in this big fight. Their group of friends is trying to stop them. There's like 3 girls and like four guys, and they start arguing. Somehow they get to this giant bet where they're like, I bet I can kill a bear. So they decide to go to this secluded place. They stop off at this little kind of like trailer shack side road like place to buy shit, and this guy's completely insane. Of course, he's got like an Uzi and shit, and they're like whatever, and he's like, don't go out there, it's crazy. Obviously your red herring character, he's your Jack Palance from Without Warning. He's your crazy Ralph from Friday the 13th. He's that guy, you know, the guy on the stagecoach that tells you not to go to Dracula's castle. He's going to give them their warning, and they get there and they start kind of screwing around and looking for hunting and everything like that. They have their guns, and there's a comic relief in Charlie and whatnot. There's this crazy son of a bitch with this weird white mask, an M16, and I think it's an M16, and a Freddy Krueger glove that's kind of has little spikes on it too, so it's even more elaborate than Freddy's glove. Yeah, so this guy decides to start picking them off, as you would, I guess, being a crazed man in the middle of the woods, and there's a kind of showdown between all these people, and they start getting picked off here and there. It's gory, and some scenes, you know, hands getting blown off and everything like that. It's relatively short. It's relatively fast-paced. It's a decent kind of slasher, kind of action survival horror film. I enjoyed it. Much better made than you would expect. There's explosions. The character Charlie is fun. And it has some familiar faces, you know, from Vacations of Terror. I think some of these people appear in some of the Ruben Galino movies as well. This is Pedro Galino. I think there has to be some sort of relation. You know, maybe this is his father and whatnot. But overall, Hell's Trap is a fun little movie from Vinegar Syndrome. They remastered it. It looks good. This was on the old BCI, you know, Crypt of Terror. I think it was on that disc, but it was definitely released by BCI at one point. They had all those kind of Mexican cheapy horror movies that were a lot of fun, including Don't Panic and Vacations of Terror and Grave Robbers and all that kind of shit like that. But these are fun, and I think this might be one of the last ones they're probably putting out. I know they put out a couple other ones too, and they probably have some more in the future, so check it out. All right, let's get into those 1982 movies.
I know I'm human. If you were all these things, then you just attack me right now. So some of you are still human. This thing doesn't want to show itself. It wants to hide inside an imitation. It'll fight if it has to, but it's vulnerable out in the open. If it takes us over, then it has no more enemies. Nobody left to kill it. And then it's won.
You son of a bitch, you moved the cemetery, but you left the bodies, didn't you? You son of a bitch, you left the bodies and you only moved the headstones! You only moved the headstones! Why? Why?
For a girl like you to come into my life, I've been waiting for a girl like you, the love that will survive. I've been waiting for someone new to make me feel alive. Yeah, waiting for a girl like you to come into my life.
You bitch! You call me a bitch!
What's in the basket?
Open season!
How do we know she is alive?
Say, please stop it. There's no more time. You've got to... Please, stop it. Stop it now. Turn it off. Turn it off. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop
All right, the first one up from 1982 is the Slumber Party Massacre. Yeah, so, you know, there's a couple big titles I'm handling myself. I already have like 25 of these things scheduled or shot, and, you know, I just can't do every single one of these in a special video with a special guest. So here we go, Slumber Party Massacre. It's been years since I watched this. This includes the first two films. There is a third one as well, and a remake. So this is produced by Roger Corman, and the story goes, you know, a lady who's an editor. A woman who's an editor got offered to direct this movie because she shot a short thing and she did really well for very cheap. And Corman said, well, why don't you direct, you know, a feature-length version of that movie and everything like that in that style. She turned down editing E.T. to direct Slumber Party Massacre. She did have a career afterwards directing some more films not like this. So this is a slasher film directed by a woman. They carried on the tradition of every person who directed a Slumber Party Massacre movie would be a woman. It's very fun. So this movie is very straightforward. It is a comedy. I mean, it's very goofy in its way that it's making fun of the slasher genre in a comedic kind of way, but it gives you everything that you want to. Is what you would think a slasher would be, almost to like comic effect. You know, of course, there's going to be tons of TNA, and there's going to be some gore. There's going to be a high kill count. It even goes down to the killer is essentially an escaped mental patient who has a drill, which is doubles for his, you know, his dick. And he's going to walk around. He's going to start killing the women. Brink Stevens has an early role in here where, of course, she appears nude. It follows the basketball team, a girl basketball team. And in the very beginning, there's a giant shower scene. The killer doesn't stop, like, starts right away. Like, in the first 15 minutes, there's, like, 2 dead bodies and everything like that. And then we kind of slow down. We focus on a group of 4 girls having, or 3 or 4 girls having this kind of party. It's 4 girls, you know, it's Slumber Party, right? With only girls only. Of course, some of the guys are going to get involved. And the drill driller killer, if you will. He carried on in a sequel where he has a guitar driller killer. Starts picking them off in gory fashion. The next door neighbor who's across the street is also on the basketball team, wasn't invited, is babysitting, and you know, she gets involved as well as you know, the basketball coach and all that kind of nonsense. You know, Slumber Party Massacre is fast paced. It's got nudity, it's got gore, it's got comedy, it's got self awareness. It's a pretty fun, solid slasher movie. The score is almost like to the point where it plays like a gothic, like almost like Phantom of the Opera kind of. You hear that kind of in the background, which just lets you know that it's like being almost like sinister when you see the killer. The killer's really intense and just like completely bonkers crazy, right? I figured, you know, when you watch a lot of slashers, you know, like Halloween, of course, in the first one, he's just some crazy mental patient that returns to his home. He came home. But, you know, and as it progressed, we got a lot more crazy people just breaking out. Home Sweet Home is another one where he just breaks out, and it almost became like, yeah, if you're going to make like a self-aware kind of slasher, why not just have it be a mad killer that's, you know, his implement weapon is just an extension of his sexual fetishes or fantasies or his dick, you know what I mean? He doesn't have one. He has sexual frustrations, whatever. You know, Slumber Party Massacre is a fun movie. It has a good place in history, and it's very well remembered and loved, and it deserves it. It's just a very fast-paced, fun, kind of goofy slasher thing. As far as the special features, it looks great on 4K. I was very amazed how well they made this look. It just looked gorgeous. We have a new 2020 4K scan, Sleepless Nights Making a Slumber Party Massacre, audio commentary with director Amy Holden-Jones, actors Michael Vaughn and Deborah DeLiso, interview with actor Rig Kennedy, and Rig Kennedy's interview is wild, boy. Wild as shit. And then we also have, you know, the unrated and rated cuts of the second one as well, Blu-ray and 4K. Great addition, great look. It looks great. From Scream Factory. Now 3, I think, only has a Blu-ray release, and I don't think the Sorority House Massacre movies, I think the first one has a Scorpion D Blu-ray, and then the second and third one, Sorority House Massacre 2 and Hard to Die, only have a DVD release, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, check these out. Fun movies, and it's been a long time since I've seen the sequel. I remember liking that as well. Okay, next one up is a 1982 movie directed by Sean Cunningham. Of course, he directed Friday the 13th in 1980, and, you know, Sean Cunningham was a producer, but he directed or wanted to make movies from all different kind of walks of life. He made a sex comedy, I think Welcome to Spring Break. He made kind of a thriller, revenge tale, and New Kids from '85, which bends into horror films as well. So he's basically saying he couldn't really get anything else to go unless it was a horror film. So he decided to adapt this Mary Higgins Clark book, A Stranger is Watching, and the title alone reminds me of When a Stranger Calls and whatnot like that. So what we have here is a father and daughter who are suffering from the loss of their mother. The mother was raped and killed in front of the daughter, and this guy is going to trial. It's played by James Russo, very tiny role, and the father wants him to put to death. He's also involved with a journalist, so he's dating this journalist now, who seems to be maybe somebody that's for, you know, the death penalty to be abolished or whatnot, or against it, or more research or whatever. So what happens is when the daughter is supposed to be getting babysat by the kind of the gardener and his wife, who is the nanny kind of deal, they leave early, and we're supposed to have this journalist's girlfriend kind of come in and take care of her. Somebody breaks in Rip Torn and kidnaps him. Kidnaps the daughter and this girlfriend, and has them in kind of an underlayer, like kind of sewer system, whatnot, and stuff like that. So it's a good setup, and it's a good kind of location, and we're kind of playing cat and mouse, like a phone tag, you know, bring them money here, and we're like, who is Rip Torn in this movie? How's he involved? And all this kind of stuff comes to light. The one kind of crazy thing about this movie is there's a bunch of homeless people in the film. You have William Hickey, who makes an appearance, who keeps calling Rip Torn a pussy. Very small role. William Hickey, of course, in Puppet Master, Nightmare Before Christmas, and 92 in the Shade, a bunch of movies. Great actor. So he's in here as this homeless guy. He's very bizarre performance, and we have a couple other homeless people. All the homeless people in the movie are kind of like cannon fodder, or like just portrayed very poorly, to be honest. There's one character that sacrifices their life just to get a death that you think, or no thank you, or no kind of focus. It's very bizarre at the very end of the movie. It's kind of shitty, actually, and just storytelling in general. I don't know if this character was more prevalent in the book, but it just comes across kind of crummy in the movie. So essentially we're just kind of there with Rip Torn being completely fucking bonkers with the daughter and everything, remembering possibly about misremembering the original murder and rape of her mom. Overall, Stranger is Watching is very solid. It's decent. It's not the most amazingly, you know, great film or directed film. It's kind of standard. It has like a gritty kind of city feel at times. Rip Torn is fine. It's not his best performance, you know what I mean? He's a good actor. He never does a bad job, but this isn't one of his stand on the edge of your, you stand up and clap kind of performances. The dad's kind of flat. He's not great. The cops in the background do their job. It's very standard to me. It's not horrible. I like the locations. A lot of it is in the city. This is A Stranger Is Watching. As far as the special features, we have new 2K scan of Inner Positive, new interview with director Sean Cunningham, and I believe there's an audio commentary on here as well, which I don't think they list on there. So yeah, check it out if it sounds like it's up your alley. A Stranger Is Watching. More thriller than horror, but worth watching. Okay, next up is from Olive Films, and this is Jekyll and Hyde Together Again. Yes, another horror parody kind of comedy. This is definitely comedy, parody, horror before it's horror. But here we go. Dr. Jekyll seems to be very popular in the 80s still. We had the BBC version with David Hemmings from 1980 and Dr. Heckle, Mr. Hype in 1980. And then 81 we go to the Indian Bollywood kind of story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And 82 we have Jekyll and Hyde Together Again. And this is one of these ones where the comedy is very much 1982. So basically Dr. Jekyll is trying to create something where I think he's trying to like a rejuvenation kind of thing, but it looks a lot like Coke. So you get the joke, right? It's 1980s. Coke is prevalent. We have the SNL kind of group out there being funny. Skit TV, 1975 SNL comes out, and we have it in the 80s and everything like that. You can just tell, like, you feel that energy of, like, the SNL energy of, like, those big party nights where, like, SNL can be really funny back in the day, but at times, if you weren't there, I imagine, because I'm watching some skits and you're just like, it's not really funny to a modern day audience. Sometimes it'll just be like the guest host or something will walk on stage in a stupid outfit and people will lose their shit. And I feel like the comedy and Jekyll and Hyde Are Together Again is a lot that. Like, hey, he snorted coke and now he's turning into a coke pimp and he's got, he's a coke fiend and he's horny and he's got the fingernail for coke, and you're just like, I get it. You did coke and he's doing coke, so therefore you have some relation and you're like, oh, I love coke, and you start laughing. Like, a lot of it is that. I will say that. It's not absolutely funny in a lot of ways, but the performance is very Garrett Graham-like. He reminds me of Garrett Graham from, Phantom of Paradise or Bud the Chud. That's how he kind of has the vibe, the actor. I don't know him. Maybe he's a comedian or something like that, but it also has the vibes of, Pandemonium or Class Reunion, especially Class Reunion from this year. It has those kind of comedy vibes. You're like, is this really funny, or is it just a very much a product of its time and is dated almost immediately? Some of the jokes are funny. Some of the sight gags are decent. It's not absolutely horrible. I know I came down hard on it, but that's not. I enjoyed my time with it. There's a couple moments that are really funny, but what really, the doctor in here, I've seen the doctor, the father of the girl he's going to marry is also a doctor, wants to perform the surgery on basically this Howard Hughes kind of character who wants a full body transplant, which reminds me of the Tales from the Crypt episode with William Hickey, who I just talked about from the previous movie. But so what happens is, he doesn't want to do the surgery because he wants to do research now, and he's a brilliant surgeon. The dad, who, his father-in-law, soon-to-be father-in-law, is a character actor. I can't remember him. He looks a lot like the guy from, he looks like a lot from the guy from Wolf Lake, but I don't know if it's 100% him. He's really funny in here. And I like the daughter. I like he starts a relationship with this prostitute who's really wild, and he's obviously he's Hyde with her, and he's Jekyll with his girlfriend, and they want a little bit of both, and the ending is kind of crazy, kind of weird, probably dated. We do have a really funny sight gag involving Robert Louis Stevens, which I actually thought was funny, and I don't think I've ever seen it done in a movie. I appreciated that. And the thing that won me over, I literally wasn't loving this movie or really even liking it until I saw Tim fucking Thomerson. And I am a fan of Tim Thomerson. Of course, he is Jack Death in the Transfers films. He is Doll Man. He's in a bunch of movies. He pops up in Cherry 2000. And you know what? Armed and Dangerous, I believe he's in. And Tim Thomerson is just a fun kind of actor. He's very comical, and he just got the right, he's just right timing and everything like that. And this character, he is in love with Mr. Hyde, and he's funny. The part where he reveals himself to be, dressing in ladies' undergarments. I mean, the humor's obviously dated, but his the way he delivers everything is funny. He's like, I used to do this only at home, but now I can't stop doing it at all, and I don't think there's a cure for that. Like, that's very funny, very silly. Overall, Dr. Jekyll, Jekyll and Hyde Together Again is okay. If you like those really stupid comedies from the time, like Class Reunion, or Hysterical, or Pandemonium from 82, all from 82, and Wacko, check out Jekyll and Hyde together again. You might like it, you might not. You might, maybe from your time where this humor was more prevalent, you know. But some of it, I was just like, I guess you just had to be there for a lot of the comedy. Very dated, and not a great way. Sometimes dating movies can be funny. Overall, I enjoy it. I don't highly recommend it, but some stuff I do like. The next one is Variola, Vera, which I believe is, it had to be, was it Soviet Union at the time, 82, it would have been, and I can't remember the actual country, maybe a Czech film, something like that. But this movie's really wild. It's listed as drama, history, and horror. So I imagine it's based on a true incident, of course. So in the very beginning of the film, I should have done some research, Dave. Some research. But this, you know, this movie is just not widely available. No Blu-rays or anything like that. But this is a really well-made movie. Kind of similar to Writhing Tongue from 1980, but different. Because this is following a group of people, and it has that paranoia, right? That disease kind of feeling. And I guess Writhing Tongue has that as well. So essentially what happens is we have this Arab character, and he's overseas in the Middle East, and he buys this flute from somebody who is suffering from fucking basically smallpox, which is a disease that they listed as dead. Nobody really gets smallpox. And this guy's playing the flute. Sorry, hit the camera. He's playing the flute. And he buys the flute, and the guy's smallpox. This guy ends up in the hospital, of course. And before they realize what's happening, the whole hospital's been contaminated. They have to shut it down. They're all locked in here. You have the guy who's running the hospital, who's having an affair, who's just an overall piece of shit. We have a doctor who, you know, tries to sleep with as many women as he can, and he's just kind of a little wild as well. And we have all these characters like, you know, the maintenance guy and a small child who's suffering from stuff, and a nurse. All these kind of people that are just basically in this hospital. A lot of characters. The guy who sells books, and we also see the bureaucracy outside the hospital. You know, all these kind of people in suits trying to pull the strings and figure out what's going on. We also have a guy who comes in who's dealt with smallpox before, and he's in this kind of big suit. Adds like that whole contamination kind of scary element about him, and he's kind of a very prevalent character. So we kind of follow these characters as they survive, and the paranoia, and when people get the smallpox, it's really fucked up and nasty, and it does make your skin crawl. It's a really well made movie, really well acted, really good characters. Overall, this is a great film. I think that I would call it horror enough because of the whole paranoia and contagion element to it. Yeah, this is also an interesting film. Well shot, like I said. The location is great, being that paranoia and also isolation and whatnot. And it ends on kind of a fucked up note. These movies about, like in Europe and stuff, like you're talking about bureaucracy and all that kind of shit like that. It's really a touchy subject, I can imagine. And it works really well in here. I bet they were pushing some boundaries with this one. Maybe even got picked up or anything like that. Maybe like got seized. I don't know much history of this movie, but I really liked it. I think it's worth checking out, and I think most people will get, you know, some really entertainment value in kind of a crazy, kind of scary, depressing way, but good stuff. Okay, the Patreon pick is A Perfect Getaway, and I had not seen this one. It was early 2013, 2014, and it feels very much that. It stars Timothy Olyphant. Who else is in here? Steve Zahn. Oh, geez. Is it, I can't believe I'm forgetting her name. The girl who's in all the woman who's in all the Resident Evil movies. Mila Jovovich? Is that who's in this one? I hope it is. My brain is goo. This is the first movie I watched this week, so almost 7 days ago I watched this one. Yeah, so it follows the story of these people on their perfect honeymoon kind of deal. Steve Zahn, and they seem to be newlyweds. Mila Jovovich. They seem to be very happy. He's kind of a nerdy character, and they're driving around and they run into Chris Hemsworth and his girlfriend, and they seem kind of like maybe untrustworthy, maybe doing a lot of drugs and everything like that. And you're like, okay, we're setting some stuff up here. They're on this isolated island, getting deeper into the island, and they met these two. They don't seem great either. And then they run into Timothy Olyphant and his girlfriend. And Olyphant is great. You know, Olyphant is in stuff like the show Justified. He was in the Crazies remake. He was in Scream 2. He's just an excellent actor. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and he's good in this. Very much a Michael Biehn style character, and I feel like he always is kind of that Michael Biehn character. Just him. He's like not ripping off Michael Biehn. He has Michael Biehn energy, and I feel like he is in that kind of place in the back when Michael Biehn was in a lot of stuff like The Abyss and Aliens and Terminator. So essentially what happens is there's been kind of a murder around the area. A couple people were brutally murdered, and they kind of seem to be maybe located in this area. So you're like, who is it? Is Steve Zahn worrying about Chris Hemsworth or Timothy Olyphant or whatnot? And as it progresses, we learn more and more. And of course, it's either going to go one way or the other, right? I don't want to spoil anything. One of these people has got to be a killer. Maybe nobody's a killer. Maybe they'll just kill each other and not know what the fuck's going on. Timothy Olyphant is great because he's like this character that's real badass, really man's man, really can do anything, survivalist, used to be in the military, and he's always like talking shit about stuff like, I could do that. He's always overconfident, but also very good at everything he does. He's just, in a funny way, like you think, oh, he seems like kind of an asshole because he's always one-upping Steve Zahn, but it just because the guy's got so much charisma as a character and a person in real life, he wins you over. You like Timothy Olyphant better than anyone else in the movie. So like, is he the killer? Is he the crazy guy? It would fit, right? As the movie progresses, they kind of move into this beautiful location, more centered towards the islands. Things are going to be revealed, and you're going to figure out, what the hell is going on. Steve Zahn's really good at it. Steve Zahn was always kind of put into like a lot of comical roles. Like, he's in Joyride as well, good role too. A little comical in that, and he's a little comical in this, but I think he gets to spread his wings a little bit, and he does a good job. Everybody in here is good. I think that it's a good, solid thriller. There's a couple scenes that are pretty violent. There's a decent kill count at one point because it kind of ups the ante at a certain point. Beautiful location, good story, keeps you guessing. Overall, just well-written thriller movie that I really enjoyed. A perfect getaway. Good stuff. Recommended. All right, let's get in these questions, comments, and concerns. Ken Coakley. Back in '73, I saw Bad Company and Friends of Eddie Coyle together at a drive-in. Bad Company was relatable to me because they were kids like me. The film was dark but truthful. It was fairly common for young boys to experience combat in Civil War. They were supposed to report immediately, and if they didn't, they were dragged out of their homes. And if they were on the run, they would be hunted down and executed. This is certainly one of those movies that couldn't be made today with all the violence against young kids. Jeff Bridges has a good body of work throughout the 70s. He hit big in '74 with Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. In '70 did King Kong. He played racing legend Junior Johnson in The Last American Hero. He was considered for the role of Matt Hooper in Jaws. The film inspired by the band Bad Company. The song Bad Company was inspired by the movie. I was born 6 gun in my hand. Behind the gun, I'll make my final stand. That was one of my favorite songs. My brother saw them at Boston Garden in '75 or 6 at the opening with the song I Was So Jealous. Yeah, Bad Company. By Bad Company on the album. Bad Company, of course, right? Speaking of Boston, the Friends of Eddie Coyle has a soft spot in my heart as I am a native of Boston, or as we call ourselves, Masshole. Alex Rocco, who played one of the bank robbers, was really a gangster in Boston. He turned his life around and moved to Los Angeles, where fellow Boston native Leonard Nimoy discovered him, and I loved seeing the hockey game on the drive-in screen as I love my Bruins. Coincidentally, one of my local drive-ins showed the entire NBA Finals a couple months ago. I also like seeing the Boston Land Sharks from when I was a kid. Robert Mitchell's Boston accent was almost funny as his Irish accent in Ryan's Daughter. Now visiting hours. Michael Ironside was at his creepiest between the way he dressed as well as his behavior. To be honest, the first time I saw the movie, I thought William Shatner's character had hired Michael Ironside's character to kill Lee Grant's character. The scene with Ironside turned the blonde woman over reminded me of the scene in Cruising when the killer had the victim lay on his stomach before repeatedly stabbing him. That scene in Cruising was scary the whole time. I didn't make the Cruising connection until the woman showed the photos of the bite marks on her back. Yeah, Cruising is awesome, and that part is scary as shit. And then Ken Coakley. I saw the 3 films of the Mexico trilogy by Robert Rodriguez theatrically. I went to a video store. The El Mariachi had been released on VHS, but all the copies were out, and I really wanted to see it, so I went to a local cinema to see it. I was still pretty crowded, and the audience really got into it. The actor playing the villain was too amped up, and the guitar case filled with guns had been done before in Django, with the exception being that Django used a coffin, but it was a very good picture overall. Yeah, he has the Gatling gun in there. And then a couple years later, I saw Desperado at my local cinema, and I noticed a lot of the cast. When Danny Trejo, who also happens to be Robert Rodriguez's cousin, appeared in the film, he was still fairly obscure at the time. I really like Joaquim de Alameda. I can't say that right now. Almeida, as the villain. He was in the second part two-part film Che, which was about Che Guevara role in overthrowing Batista as president of Cuba, replacing Batista with Fidel Castro. The second movie was about his attempt to overthrow Bolivia's president, played by Almeida. I also like seeing Herberto Tino Lavara, who was a security guard at the bar. He was a founding member of the rock band Cruzados. In fact, he was a singer-guitarist of the band's house band. He was born in East LA with Cheech Marin, as well as the Talking Heads film True Stories. A couple months ago, I watched a PBS documentary about Raul Julia, one of my favorite actors. I found out that Desperado was meant to star Julia, but Julia became sick and couldn't do it. I also found out the documentary that Raul Julia played Dracula on Broadway and was replaced by Frank Langella. His interpretation of Dracula was shown on TV, but I can't find it on YouTube. I've seen photos and it looked amazing. And I saw Once Upon a Time in Mexico at the drive-in, and with Underworld. Once Upon a Time in Mexico seemed like a tribute to Sergio Leone more than a name. I felt like I was seeing a Sergio Leone film at the drive-in again. Saw The Good, Bad, Ugly at a drive-in when I was 6. As far as the cast goes, they were all great, including Ricky Iglesias. I don't like his music, but I have to give the devil his due. Another film I saw at the drive-in was The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. I saw it in the bill with Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. I was too young to understand it at the time, but over the years I got it. James Broderick played the driver of the train. In 1969, he co-starred in the movie Alice's Restaurant. In 1975, he played the strict negotiator in Dog Day Afternoon. He was also the father of Matthew Broderick. And then we have a lot of information here. I also saw Nightmare on Elm Street when it first came out in 1984. I went to see it because Robert Englund, I've been following his career since his first film, Buster and Billy. I expected him to play the villain, victim. I couldn't believe that he played the killer. I may get in trouble for having this opinion, but this movie did nothing for me at all. I like seeing Saxon, Charles Fleischer, aka Roger Rabbit, of course, as a doctor doing the sleep study, and I like seeing Ed Call from Walking Tall as Johnny Depp's father, but I had a hard time sympathizing for a bunch of unlikable characters. They all look like my nemesis from when I was in high school. That's why I laugh when Johnny Depp tries to convince people that he was a metalhead back when he looked like a preppy on and off screen. I mean, these are also kids in the movie. Kids are assholes. Now for Manhattan Baby. A lot of the people dismissed the film for reasons unbeknownst to me. The title can be better, and the special effects of the lasers binding Christopher Connelly wasn't that great, but I liked the atmosphere, and they didn't dub a Giovanni Fresno voice with the very annoying like they did in House by the Cemetery. Of course, Bob. When I met composer Fabio Frizzi a few years ago, I asked him his favorite score from his body of work. He replied, Manhattan Baby. I have to agree, the soundtrack was similar to The Beyond, for sure. Besto, What's the Movie at 3138? That's New York Ripper. Groggy, 1971. Excellent as ever. Never doubt you are appreciated. I appreciate it. Thank you. Nick Mua. Seeing the original Nightmare on Elm Street on the big screen must have been quite the experience. It's one of those movies you'll be willing to sit through multiple trailers and commercials for. I'd even put them up with noisy moviegoers and their brats. Senor Rodriguez Mexican Trilogy looks like a good crash course in contemporary westerns. I might attend said course. Will you be teaching it Sensei Parker? Absolutely not. Girls Night Out is an excellent slasher, especially Rutula Alda's performance. I hope they paid her double. Yeah, she's great, if you know what I mean. Ha. Questions. What is your absolute favorite college slasher? I'm torn between Hell Night and The Silent Scream. College slasher. That's tough, you know. Geez. High school slasher revenge movie would be Slaughter High. I love that movie. But college, I don't really know. I really don't know. They have The Dorm that Drip Blood. Hell Night's best of those ones. They have Final Exam. It's going to be Final Exam or Hell Night. Was your college experience or one drunken crazy party, if you don't mind me asking? I didn't drink when I went to college. I have a weird story. I drank until I was 18 and then didn't drink until I was 35 and don't drink again. So, I mean, I'm not much of a drinker. My drinking life was very short, so it wasn't. I went to a community college because I'm just a pool boy. If you were teaching a class about movies, what genre would you pick to teach and how would you go about it? Genre of movies. You know, I probably would teach horror. I would have to teach horror. It's what I know, and I'd probably start the history of horror. You know, I don't know. I'd go in order and basically talk about movies from every point. You got to play new ones too to get their attention, and hopefully, you know, it depends on the kids. I'm not a teacher though, so I'd have to sit there and think of a plan. And then we have, I hope you spared further technical difficulties. Damn them gremlins. Till next week. Thank you, Angela150. You're back. I'm so happy. Thank you, Ed Rooney, 1967. Thanks for another great review update about the Mexican trilogy. Was a big fan of El Mariachi and Desperado back in the day. I do have Laserdisc of them by Sony. Never really liked Once Upon a Time in Mexico. When Arrow announced it, said I revisited the old Blu-ray triple feature set by Sony, and I have to admit, I immediately decided that I don't need the upgrade. El Mariachi will always be an interesting piece of no-budget cinema, especially with the old commentary about Rodriguez, but it is, for me, my taste at least, lacking in entertainment value, simply because of its massive limitations. Desperado is still Amarachi's big brother on steroids. It features great action sequences, some superb dialogue, and of course Banderas and Hayek on their creative apex. Rodriguez's kind of epileptic continuity is even more evident, but still works during the action sequences and transitions. Once Upon a Time in Mexico, in my opinion, mostly boring. The action is stupid, continuity is non-existent anymore, and the acting is not only uncontrolled, but horrendously bad. Banderas does an okay job, but seems tired, and Depp has some funny moments. All three movies show Rodriguez's lack of storytelling prowess, and scripts are merely a bunch of set pieces thrown together. Adjusted for inflation, the budgets would be today like this: El Mariachi $16,000, Desperado $14.5 million, and Once Upon a Time in Mexico close to $50 million US. Rob Yabaz, yeah boy, what's up buddy? Jesse Diaz, El Mariachi is my favorite of that set. I wish they did the aspect ratio from the VHS though. It's my favorite cherry poppin' film from a director. Thank you. Let's get into this update, guys. Alright, let's get into this update. First up is Joyride from, I'll never be able to say the cinematography. Line from Vinegar Syndrome. I'd have to hear them say it out loud. I'm sure I have, and I'm just a jackass. But yeah, this is 1977 film. Not too familiar with this one, honestly. Been collecting the line. Hopefully it pays off. Then next up we have Thieves Like Us, another one from the same line with Keith Carradine and Shelley Duvall. Some very nice additions here. Then we have a couple VSAs here. My Father is a Hero. And we have Love on Delivery, Shaw Brothers flick. Really wild cover here. Bloodbath at the House of Death, starring Vincent Price. I think it's the 84. A comedy here, of course. You know, I don't think I've ever watched Bloodbath at the House of Death. Looks very fun, though. We have The Devil Times 5, leaves no one alive, of course. Seen the trailer 10 million fucking times, and I don't think I've ever watched this movie. Now we have it in 4K. Look forward to finally watching this thing. Classic Killer Kids movie. Had a Code Red DVD, had a Blu-ray, all sorts of things. Then we have The Mark, which is the Vinegar Syndrome kind of, you know, erotic label here, an erotic passion. There's a nipple there. Maybe I'll have to cover that up. I don't think I'm going to show. Yeah. In the back there. Then Our World is Drowning and Going to Hell, Saturn's Core, the underground films of Richard Baylor. These look pretty fucking wild. Maybe some Richard Kern style stuff, possibly. We have a couple ones I forgot to show last week because something went wrong with the camera. Side Effects May Vary. The new J.R. Bookwalter movie. Hasn't directed a movie in years. Super excited to finally check this bad boy out. Gotta love J.R. Bookwalter. He's got a bunch of the old kind of cast Tempe used to use, like James L. Edwards, you know, Tina Krause, yeah, Sasha Graham. Cool, cool stuff. We have all the little kind of stuff that came with it here. We got the theatrical cut, got a little sticker, a little mask, a Kickstarter thing. I got all that stuff. And then last, but certainly not least, we have Cliffhanger on 4K. Always loved this movie. Watched it a million times. Now I get to watch it in style in 4K. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.